Okay, welcome to our first session of the day, which will be a what if. So this is basically going to be a conversation, not a presentation. So actually we want it to be sort of like a kamkunji, yeah? So just engaging each other, a town hall between ourselves here as panelists and the audience. So I think without further ado, I'll just give an opportunity to the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Karuga there.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Karuga Koinange, principal and founder of Urban Savannah Design Studios.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vijay Patel. We are property developers from Mombasa.
Good morning. My name is Noelle Oyunga, and I am a graduate architect at Cave Bureau.
Good morning. My name is Emma Miloyo. I'm an architect. I'm an educationist. I taught her swimming. She just she sat here and she said, "Hi, Miss Emma," and I was like, "Oh my God, I taught you." Anyone who calls me Miss Emma, I know them from. So I'm an educationist. I'm an architect, and I do a few things here and there. Basically, I'm a busybody, but nowadays we have a nice word for us. We call ourselves multi-potentialites. We have a lot of potential, yeah. So that's what you are as well. Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here. Thanks.
Good morning. I think Emma has introduced me, but I'll mention my name. I think I like that new word, multi. Potentialite. Yes. Yeah. Arthur Adeya is my name. I'm trained in architecture and landscape architecture, but I'm not exactly saying what I do anymore.
Thanks for that. I think you can see the kind of crop that we have. We can engage them as much as possible. And I think without further ado, maybe I'll just give each one of you an opportunity to maybe say what is your own definition of the word utopia? It could be a one-word answer.
In what context?
African context.
Can I start?
Yeah.
So if I think about the word utopia, it's dream, right? And it's good to dream. And you may need to deliver something today which is practical and realistic whilst trying to achieve that dream, right? So you mentioned you wanted to talk about Wakanda. Yeah.
She's up there on the screen.
So the question I have is, in this Wakanda utopia, they flush, they lose. Yeah. And they go somewhere.
Correct.
And in our emerging markets, when you do that, they just go down the ground. So if we are building utopias, we need to start building with a utopian urban planning, a utopian infrastructure, so that your dreams of architects to inspire these life-living, changing things are achieved ultimately. So that's where I would start with utopia.
I like that dream. Anyone else?
I can go first because I know Arthur will be controversial. Second. I'm so sorry. I think, and I like what Vijay said, a dream. So in the end, it's unachievable, but it's something we aspire to. So in my context of the built environment, and that's what I meant, because utopia could be in many contexts, but in the sense of what our environment is and where we live is a functioning city, even in the context of what you said, that things work. When you open a tap, there's water. When you go out, there's a green space for you to play that you don't have to pay for. So for me, it's just that a happy society, and happiness is impacted a lot by your environment. So whatever impacts on happiness, which is very many things in the context of the environment. That would be utopia. A happy people. Yeah. It may not be achievable.
Noelle?
So I think I want to disagree with the word utopia. I don't think it's a word that really applies to Africa in that sense. I think it was born somewhere else. I think it's a word that belies a certain system that is not going to help us sort out our issues. I'd rather the word maybe balance, restoring balance, coming back to what we know as scientists and spiritual people, as Africans, and tied to our spirituality and having already these systems already set out with what we deem to be perfection or, a working system. So I think I'd shift away from utopia and maybe go to something else, another word.
Okay. Interesting. Arthur?
Wow. First of all, thanks, because when we saw this word the first time, we were a bit disturbed. It felt like one of those things that's, sorry to say, a little simplistic, because we use it a lot in architecture. But suddenly, by asking the question, it's provoked lots of different things. I think just Vijay's first take about a dream, what I immediately thought of is whose dream? And I thought that we met utopia a lot in architecture school, in design school. But that utopia was always somebody else's dream. And while we might not necessarily want to use the word utopia when we hear it, there's also a certain dream we have. And for me, lately, I've been worried that that dream was not really our own. And what do I mean by that? I happened to be in Dubai about a week ago. I was looking at Dubai Marina. First time I went to Dubai was 2008. I stayed in Dubai Marina. There were maybe 2 or 3 towers. I looked across this time and there are 15, 16 towers. And I looked, I've been looking at Nairobi, and we are getting stressed because we are at 20 floors. That's becoming the average. And I began to ask myself, why are we so worried about height? Is it from our thinking of utopia, or is it from a deep perspective? So I didn't really have the answer. I just wondered, why did I look at a certain point at height and immediately say no? Because somewhere in the back of my mind, there was a utopia that I had that did not involve height. And I'm not saying height is right either. I don't know what the answer is. So when suddenly now when I'm thinking about utopia, I'm actually thinking, and maybe this is to Vijay's thing, what really is our dream? And that would probably define what the vernacular might be, or what utopia might mean, or if we even need the word utopia.
I like how you say that each person has a different dream, or so everyone's definition would be different. But as a collective of people who share the same sense of values and principles and desires for the species to go forward, and how we live comfortably, how we engage with each other, right, and live like a community and believe in one thing, then there is a shared dream there. It may have nuances, and it is perhaps evolved into a shared dream by conversations, by discussions, right? So there can be a shared dream.
Karuga?
Utopia, complex in many ways, the term itself. For me, it's a perfect, or say an imagined or perfect place or state. So it's not necessarily purely about the architecture, yeah. So, but I think I agree with Noelle that we just need to basically redefine, yeah, our vision of, or maybe we come up with our own. We define here, come up with our own definition. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. Okay. I think so. Yes. Generation. Yeah.
But I like the word balance. because everything is it's about balance. Because I had the privilege of speaking to Arthur before, and why he's talking about the dream, and whose dream was this utopia? Whose dream is that? Who's decided that that's our utopia as Africans? It's not us. So whose dream is it that we are dreaming? Yeah? And whose dream was it 50 years ago? And whose dream is it now? And have we changed? So it's about balance, because I think the world keeps on changing. And while we're talking about African vernacular and everything, but as Africans, we have changed. And not only as Africans, the world has changed. So as we're looking back and to move forward, same with Europe. Whatever was happening in 100 years, how they were dressing 100 years ago is not how they're dressing now, and neither should it be the same for us. But what is this balance that we're moving towards, which doesn't necessarily forget everywhere we've come from, but also doesn't deny us whatever the world has to offer in terms of regeneration or whatever, and what balance, therefore, in state of mind and makes us happy in environment. What's that balance? Because I'm liking the word balance, because you can never achieve perfection. You can never achieve one African way of doing things, and more the world is becoming very how would I say it, monolithic, yeah? So we're sort of merging and morphing into one way, and 50 years from now, maybe we'll all be speaking one language. Okay, 100 years from now, maybe. We'll all be speaking. So how do we maintain a little bit of that, but not deny that the world and life is dynamic, and it will change?
Yeah, it's interesting that, with all your definitions, the words that are coming out: balance, perfection, aspiration, dream. But I think the parallel is it has more to do with society. Yeah, so society has to be happy. Yeah, or the members of society have to achieve this kind of balance. So as patrons of the building industry, yeah, the developers, landscape architect, designers. What role do you think we have, and how can we achieve this balance, this perfection, yeah, so to speak?
I think for me, sustainability is a big thing. I've lived, I lived in Europe, all over the world, as an architect, and now I live in Nanyuki. Yeah, so I think sustainability is amazing. I wake up in the morning. I'm an environmental architect. I trained as an environmental architect at Cambridge. So that's a very important thing. So you wake up in the morning, the sun comes from the east over the mountain, warms up one room, well, pretty much is where you go and hang out because it's very cold. Yes. So the way we live, I have solar power. I'm off the grid. I have water, collect water, eggs, So it teaches you we have chickens, kenyeji. So it's very important. Sustainability, I think, for me is a big driver for us because it goes back to the vernacular. We go away from the monolithic. People live differently. I get milk for my neighbor. Yeah, so we have to start thinking about sort of environmental, not just design, but living. Yeah.
I'm also liking the word balance. I've been thinking, you mentioned the word dynamic. So it is a dynamic balance. So you're always trying to balance as it changes. Yeah. I like sustainability as well. But in a world of 9 billion people, right, there was a time urban sprawl was supposed to be the model. It's unsustainable. So humans as a species are very self-centric. Right? So the balance has to include the rest of the environment, the rest of the world, because the earth does not need us, right? We need the earth to survive. It's as simple as that. And if you pan out now in terms of time horizon and you go back 1 million years, right? The earth has always been changing, but it has always allowed life and different life to sustain itself on our planet. So if we are now to live for the next maybe 1,000 years before we evolve into the next thing, it is important to have a balance, but practically 9 billion people cannot live the ideal life in Nanyuki, because because then you won't have the wildlife, then you won't have the trees that absorb the carbon dioxide and create the mass, right? So that's why I'm starting to like the word balance.
So Vijay, wearing your developer's hat, yeah. Okay. How would you? How can you assist Karuga to achieve his dream of picking chicken or eggs from his neighbor?
I think what he's trying to do is create this free lifestyle which is connected to earth, right? Now the question is, how can you have that in an urban city center, right? In an economic environment where you have people who are employed as architects and engineers, right? And not just a semi-retired or a retired farmer, right? So there is that balance. Now, can you bring that in terms of the happiness he feels out there when he's waking up every morning or going home every day? Right? So where can he de-stress himself? I think that would be the answer.
Can I go? So I would ask, I guess it's a question to ask the room, yeah? What does it look like to have the kind of life or the kind of satisfaction Karuga seems to have from his life, right? Because I think, back to the question, as custodians of the built environment, it's our responsibility to listen to who we're supposed to serve, but architecture doesn't seem to do that. And it's only recently that we're starting the conversations to bring this to light, that we build as if this world is ours, forgetting it's for our children, it's not for us. Yeah. So I think the first thing is to listen to people, listen to society, who we are in service of, see what it is they would like to experience in their lives personally. I like what Karuga is doing. I would love to live that kind of life. And how to achieve that. You know, maybe it's another conversation of, okay, then we're so obsessed with living in Nairobi. How about let's see how a rural life gives you the same satisfaction, the same achievements that you think you will arrive to in the city. How do we start to see that in our rural pockets, right? Yeah, so I think it's...
Thanks. I don't think everybody necessarily, and I'm liking the question that we are custodians, and I'm liking that you're saying we should listen, but I think we have another role to define even as we listen, because like Vijay said, we don't know what's good for us sometimes. I think as architects and people who shape the earth in a sense, architects think that we're gods sometimes, between us and doctors, God help society, but we do shape how the world, how Earth, and we're big contributors in terms of sustainability and what he was talking about. So I think we should listen, but should have even, there's a bigger role for us in defining what that is. And I think Vijay spoke, and your question was, how do you bring, we need to be connected to the earth, and that's one thing you struggle with when you're in Dubai. That it's a plastic life, kind of. So where's the space for redesigning how society is by how we plan our city, so that we still have a bit of that experience and connectedness to the earth and the trees and everything, but it's still in a dense city environment, because we're 9 billion in the earth, and not everybody will want to live in Nanyuki. Some of us like our art cafe coffee that is 2 minutes away. You have a Java in Nanyuki? Okay. Yeah, so I think there is a role for us to listen, but we also know, and then to find that balance. And so dynamic balance for happiness, Yeah.
I think, one of the things that happens with these conversations is Karuga says something and you think of something so profound, and then suddenly 4 people throw you off. So I first want to tell Karuga, for example, I am an unabashed urbanist. My preference is city living. I would love what Karuga does every once in a while. I actually do like going out and living that sort of life. So I think that goes back to the word balance. But the original question, I think, started off from what do you think we should do? And one of the things that's been very profound for me lately is history, and really going in and delving into our history, because somewhere when you go into history, you find out the reason behind your biases and your prejudices, and each of us are individual about that. And I think our bias in Nairobi, most of us who have grown up in Kenya, and this will be different for different people, our bias is because of the historical origins of Nairobi and what we were told is a good city, green city in the sun. And so anything that goes outside of that historical factor is suddenly not good, and we begin to fight it. So now when you're talking about density, sorry, I'm not name dropping, I'm just mentioning, because when you go out, you begin to think of different things. I was in Barcelona in 2018, and I would want you to go look at the plan of Barcelona. The density is probably the same as Githurai. But when you're walking in the streets, you don't feel that. You don't feel that sense, because they've thought through the street, they've thought through the notion that that living on the street is what's most important, and there's nothing wrong with bringing people into this dense neighborhoods. There's nothing wrong with making sure you have a defensible courtyard, yet the outward is actually facing the street. And so suddenly you can bring your 9 billion people, still have a bit of the community living, and you're actually thinking about their environment, not just their housing. For us, a lot of times when we think about that sort of housing, we first want to go into a nice, big, open plain, and then drop apartments there. No shops, put a shop in the corner, you say people need milk to get, and suddenly you discover, I mean, come on, the salon, So I ask a lot of young guys, where would you like to live? And most of them will say, yes, I'd like a place where when I drop off the matatu, I can pick up, I can immediately get my baba, pick up some chips, nyama, maybe have a drink, and then just walk up to where I live. And that sort of living, again, is not for everybody, because the beauty about having 9 billion people is chances are you will not have 9 billion who are 60 and above. There's a whole range. So if we do cities well, we allow those who need to live in cities well, we allow those who need to go out into the country and to enjoy. I'm going to visit Karuga, because it's good to know somebody like that out there, so you can do that once every week. And I think that way, that balance, but then also the vernacular is beginning to emerge from there if we go back to our history and figure out what we really want to.
I completely agree. Sorry to interrupt. I'm also an urbanist, because it's the most efficient way for us to use the least landmass and integrate people. Okay. But one of the things I wanted to ask, do you guys have internet and mobile phones? Yeah, and cars and petrol stations in urban? And I know the answer is yes. So what I'm trying to get to is, we want that urbanization, but we want the comfort of modern life, right? And it's not everyone can have that. It's just a simple reality that dream is not achievable for everyone, right? And that's what I was bringing that up.
Can I? Yeah. I think I disagree. I disagree because, first of all, we have defined what people want. Right, I feel like by the time we're having a conversation like this, we seem to have defined what people want. And I tend to think that, there's books like The Architecture of Happiness that talk about what it is that people actually want from their lived spaces. I'll also touch on what you said on history. Whose history, right? Are we talking about Barcelona as a blueprint of what it looks like to bring 9 billion people into a city? Or are we looking at fractal settlements that were there before Barcelona was even conceptualized? So, you know, at what point are we looking to say, okay, this is what we could do that will solve the issues that we have? I tend to think that Africans and the science that we've held over the years that was lost during the colonial project, and you know, the connections we had to the earth, to spirituality, we had the answers. I think we were just sort of interrupted, and my work and the work that we do at the cave is now at the point where we want to hit pause in what we think people want, and then now give it like a proper interrogation. Okay, what is it that makes living as an African, you know, the kind of life that we want, the utopia that we're looking for? So whose history, where are we looking at as jump-off point? Is it the West?
Jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here's the interesting thing about history. It happened. So the colonialists came. Things changed. It's impossible to undo that. And it's important to understand what tweaked in the way we live. And then as you ask the question very clearly, whose history? So I'll tell you that the history we are living in, our understanding of Nairobi, is not ours. One of the things that happened in Nairobi when they were debating the 1962 Lancaster, in the 62, 61 Lancaster conferences around the constitution for Kenya, was a desire to give Nairobi a special status. And you notice that discussion has never left. We're still discussing it, even now when we're discussing it over NMS. And one of the things they said about giving Nairobi a special status is, once independence happens, there's going to be a lot of unplanned development coming into Nairobi. And Nairobi was one of the jewels in the British Empire. This was their capital. Yeah? And they're mentioning that if that happens, this thing gets destroyed. And so the question for me suddenly is like, I'm in Nairobi, and I'm looking at somebody else who's coming in. Why am I having a problem? Why am I saying, no, Nairobi is full. I'm already here, don't come in. And it comes from that message was passed that many people in Nairobi is bad. And that we need to protect Nairobi. And they actually said, let the unplanned developments happen in the environs of Nairobi. And incidentally, that's what has happened. And so if we embraced the notion that we need to accept and we need to understand inclusivity, then suddenly the way we think about it is different. And I'm not saying we are doing history. We are saying that I understand how history knocked us off course. Now that we understand that, let us think deeply from within ourselves how that gets resolved. And I would like to encourage everybody to three books. 3 books changed my life in 2018. One is by Professor Madara Ogot and Bethel Ogot, The History of Nairobi, that one is a dry academic book, but it has a lot of information about the origins of Nairobi, which is very interesting. The second one is called Order Without Design, How Markets Shape Cities, by a guy called Alain Bertrand, who is an architect, then later urban planner, but then worked with a lot of urban economists to begin to demonstrate how if we don't understand economics, and economics shapes the city, we are on a fool's errand. And then the third one is Triumph of the City by a guy called Ed Glazer, who speaks about the city and what the city has done for us, and how we can think through sustainability, economics, and all that through the veins of the city. So it's not to say that I'm saying Barcelona or Dubai. I'm simply saying that once we go to any of those things, how do you look at them and then look through our own lens and ask ourselves questions about the things that automatically shun. You know, you see height and say no immediately, but you don't really know why you're saying no. I'm not saying that the answer is yes, let's get height, but I'm just saying that we are already so, yes. And I know when I went through my undergraduate, for some reason the Garden City was supposed to be a good thing. But now I don't think so. But anyway, let me not hog too much. Let Emma jump in.
It's interesting that I think with the discussion that we've had, one of the things that's coming out is to achieve this balance, there sort of needs to be a blur between social economic lines where you don't basically terms like haves and have-nots need to be abolished, for us to achieve that kind of balance. So is it in order for us to do that, who's responsible? Is it developer driven? Is it a legislative thing? Having sat in a position, like AK, is it an urban planning thing? What is it, and what can we do to achieve that balance?
They have and they have not. Bottom up, top down things. Anyway, I don't know whether there's any, and I think that's utopia, that's a dream. I don't think in any society, whether it's, all of you did Shambhala Wanyama, that was very, it just shows my age, the way I'm also on Facebook, and I'm not on TikTok, okay. Yeah, but Shambhala Wanyama, it's just about, what's his name? What's the English version? Animal Farm. There, you might know it. There's another book you should read. But anyway, it is utopia. I don't think how we are in our, human, we are self-centered in a sense. So I don't think it is possible to legislate out, and we can see that with all the, with the communist project, that there'll still be the haves and there'll still be the have-nots, even if you try to legislate it. But it's about probably balance. Balance between what the haves have access to and what the have-nots, quote unquote, have access to, and finding a place that it's still there, but there is a balance to it. So I don't think legislation is the answer. I think maybe urban planning is, which then speaks to policy and legislation. But we have all those, funny enough, we have all those wonderful policies and plans. And even if we're talking about densification, at least in the Nairobi context, we have a plan, we have zoning guidelines, but they're not necessarily followed. So in a sense, I don't know. Because we've legislated, but then the dynamics of market have shifted that whole thing, and people have forgotten laws and enforcement and whatever, and said, look, people want to live in Kilimani, people want to have bars in Kilimani, and the whole conversation around noise is an interesting one right now, but people want to play, people want to work. Urban planning would be the solution. There are plans in place, but somewhere there, we're not able to stay within those constraints that have been laid because of market dynamics. So maybe it's an emerging market problem. Maybe we're growing faster than we can keep up with ourselves in our context. And I just wanted to mention, even when you're talking about Dubai and the towers and Barcelona, but it is organized, and it is organized. And the sense we get in our context is that it is not pre-thought, it's not organized. So someone actually thought out that this is how dense Barcelona is going to be, but someone didn't think out Gidurai happened, and nobody thought through that this is how dense. So that forward planning and everything is our biggest challenge, I think. Yeah, forward planning for utopia or for balance.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
From an economics perspective, and it's not the market participants, by the way. Actually, if you look at it from across countries and across times in different countries, economically, both top-down and bottom-up work, right, at a particular time in that economy cycle. But the only reason they can work is that they are followed through within a sustained rule. Okay? I've heard people talk a lot about Singapore. Why can't we not be Singapore? The reason is we just don't follow rules. It's simple, right? Right? We just don't follow rules. So And the reason for that is everyone can't have everything. We have 9 billion people. We need to live in a society of rules. I can't go and put up a multi-story building in next to your farm, or because that would be wrong. Now, do I? Yeah. So exactly, and so there are some freedoms that you have to lose so that you can be part of a better collective, right? And it's the enforcement and it's the entire environment within which that is created that is the key.
Okay, so we don't follow rules, and I agree, we tend to do what we want, but nature has its rules, and we all follow nature's rules. Like Ms. Emma was saying, Githurai happened. You know, Githurai happened. It's not planned. It's not part of the colonial project. And why is that? You know, the question to ask is why do we have informal settlements in Nairobi, and they seem to be growing at a faster rate than even our planned neighborhoods? Why is that happening? And I think once we answer that question, we will then we will open our eyes to what is actually happening, to what people actually want. I think there is a sort of a delusion that wealth and money brings, that the more you have, the better your life is. And so everybody is sort of drawn to this, like, to the city to try and get that dream. However, you know, again, that's not the dream that we have as Africans. I think there's something went wrong. We lost our minds and decided that the more we get, the more we have achieved. So, in light of that, what do we then do to put pause, to hold, hit pause and say, okay, this is what's happening. These are the symptoms of the system that is there now. What do we do to reverse it or to reorganize it? I think that's right.
So I was a little lucky. It's just about a year now when I left one of the jobs I was doing, and I've been lucky to be able to have a year off to kind of sabbatical, read a little, think a little, and provoke people a little. I mean, that's why Emma is saying I'm controversial. So I enjoy sketching, those of you who do, and there's an art cafe that I like to sit here in Kileleshwa, and I've sketched one of the scenes there quite a bit, and I just one day posted it and noted that most of those towers were not there 20 years ago when I was in school. They were mainly 4-story. And 1 or 2 people commented and said, oh, now this is becoming Kayoleshwa. Oh, Kileleshwa is going to the dogs. And I was doing that on purpose, because I'd also read Bathwell Ogot's book. So then I told them, if you know the history of Kileleshwa, it's very interesting. Because when the city began, of course the city began, it was under the railway, then at some point, it's really the CBD area, and Kileleshwa was actually an African village. This is where Africans were allowed to come and set up their villages. Several villages, they even had population counts. And as the city grew, they decided to push them out and allow this for government housing, which came on 1-2 acre plots. And they were pushed to Pangani, but the Indians were in Pangani, so they were pushed further to Majengo. And so I told one of the people, they're just coming back. and really, when we think of how they're coming back, we need to be saying, okay, just this morning I was talking to somebody and saying, the trouble is, you'll create rules that then say, no, you can't build here, but then the market forces you to build. But then you don't then create rules that will help that build well. And I was getting panic that, you're going to be having all these towers, and then there's walls, and then there's open drains, because that's what we knew, and overhead power cables. And so you don't have a sidewalk, you don't have a good street, you just have walls. And the more it fails, then it will be bad. And I'm thinking, hold on, we really should have been dealing with the developers to when we talk about improving infrastructure, we are really talking about improving the streets where people can access, improving parks. And that's what we should really be discussing with the people who are bringing the density, with the Africans who are coming back to take what was theirs in Kileleshwa. The second thing, again, now I'll name drop again, Vijay, in 2017, I was in Singapore, and I walked into they have a nice exhibit, and in fact, it really frustrated me that so many of our planners and our city people always go to benchmark in Singapore, and they never come back with some of this information. And these guys had a very simple video that was really for kids, but I learned more from that video than from many of the urban planning classes that I went to. And the first thing they say in that video is, we need land for everything. Whatever we do, even if you're going to talk about the internet, at some point there's going to be a data center somewhere, it's going to need land. And so because they're an island, they said they very early on, they understood that they don't have that much land and that they need to plan this land well. Sorry, and then they went through, the second thing that was said was very profound for me because it was very simple. They said everybody is going to live within 400 meters of a park. And you know, that's very different from the way a lot of urban planning guidelines we read are that say, oh, this number of population, you need a high school, this number of population, you need. But just that simple statement of everybody will live within 400 meters of a park was very profound. And I thought, hold on, why didn't the urban planners come back and say everybody will live within 400 meters of a park? Then we start figuring all this out before saying, no, we can't have towers and all that. Then we start figuring out Githurai. What does that mean? Does it mean that you're going to go back and buy some properties and put a park? Because there's wholesome living. You can have towers, 19, 20, 40 stories in Singapore. But again, that's another place where you don't feel the density at all. You walk in the streets, it's fantastic. There's so many parks and all that. So these places that are more dense than Githurai feel less dense than Githurai. And so it's our fault as planners, as designers, that Githurai has happened. And all we say is, oh, look how bad it is. And we have not been there to really think through, besides telling them what is bad. Yeah.
Just a quick one. So there, by the way, I'm an urbaniter by Damu Kabisa. I decided to go, yes. I decided to, this is now from a designer's perspective. You know, two things I want to touch on. Firstly, this is the design side as an architect. It's always nice to go back to, you know, I lived in London, lived in Paris.
Name dropping.
Bado sijamaliza. So yes, also been, you know, Dubai, I know where you're talking about, you know, Singapore. So it comes to a point, maybe, I think this is my feeling as an architect. If you're a maker or a designer, it's very important to go back, yes, to you know, urban sprawl, fantastic. You know, I'm with you, but I made a decision. Not sprawl. Density, planning. So I think it's important to go back, and for me as a designer, to, you know, sort of having that time out there, just finding out how people live, you know, how we basically simply live, just going to back to the basics, the way you sit down and you sketch. That's what I also do, and just understanding, you know, how the world, you know, how environment, you know, where the sun rises, where it sets. How people live as well. We're talking about Barcelona, and how people are ordered. You know, we all have our own culture. I'm saying we define our utopia definition, Wakanda. So that's the first one. So I'm going to jump into the second one. Now, it has to be sustainable. You know, when you live in organized places such as Barcelona or, you know, whatever, somewhere out there. I remember I did a project 10 years ago called What If? We did that with Lele, who's here, architect Lele. And this was a sort of a CSR project for Urban Savannah. And we did a number of projects. One day I was actually going from a meeting to Upper Hill. And then I was driving myself. And I got stuck in traffic for 1 hour, you know, and it was a client meeting from Westlands to Upper Hill. I got so frustrated because if this was in the UK, I would have just jumped on a bicycle. Yes, and actually immediately after that whatever happened, I bought a motorbike. Yeah? So I got late for the meeting. Yes, and it was a critical meeting, and it's unfortunate. So it took me 1 hour to get from Westlands, sort of roundabout, to Upper Hill. So that's how What If Nairobi was born. Because then I basically designed this highway that the government of Kenya, we need to have a discussion, because we are the ones who designed it. All of a sudden it's, you know, Andrew, yes. So we designed elevated highways so we can get across quickly, designed the sidewalk, so if you need to walk quickly, cycle, etc., and a tram, actually there was a tram. So I did that mainly because I found that, you know, the public infrastructure, you know, we're designing all these high-end houses, but as soon as you get out of there with your big car, you get stuck in traffic, you know? I mean, potholes, problems everywhere, you know? So I got frustrated by that. We're doing these beautiful things inside, you know, private, and then as soon as you get into the public domain, it's haywire. So that's how What If was born. And we did a series of those projects looking at different aspects. Yes, I mean, I'm talking about the design architectural side. So the last one, what's the last one I was going to tell you? Yeah, so I think What If was very important for me at that time because I was struggling, yes, particularly after living in organized, ordered, you know, planned places. And I came here and I said, we have to do something and put them on billboards and show people this is what's possible, isn't it? But that also continues to frustrate you, and sometimes that's why it's good to get out. And I think you said something, you said you didn't have an answer for this, but one of the big ones completely is that aspect of order, isn't it? Rules to live by, particularly in more dense areas, I think.
So, so Karuga, I know you also did a What If on Kongowea Market. Now, the gentleman sitting next to you is developing at Kongowea.
You're supposed to, just if I may interrupt. I was just about to come to the point, but you stole my thunder.
So I think for me actually.
But let me just attempt partial thunder. Yeah? Everyone's name dropping here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, I've lived in Mombasa. and it happens to Mombasa Island actually happens to be a world-class master plan city, the first capital of our nation, right? And as a rule of thumb, major cities or highly dense cities tend to have a road ratio to the developed ratio, right? If you look at Tokyo is about 24, Paris is about 20, then Madrid is about 20, and they go down like that. So 20 is, as a rule of thumb, a good number to have. Today, Mombasa County is at about 4.5%, 4.5. This is why you get stuck in traffic, right? It's not just about the expressways and the highways, is you need to get off the highway and then go somewhere else. Okay? And if you now break the county down into west, north, south, they reach about 2.3, 1.5, something like that. Mombasa Island is 20.4%. Okay? It's 6-story average buildings, a few high rises, okay? And it's all lost. So that's all gone. So we happen to, it's what we are talking about. We have an example here.
Yeah, could I say that actually Mombasa feels very, I was just whispering to him that it's dense, but it's organized density in a sense. It's still, you've got the shops, you've got the, even a bit more of the street life that's organized like this. We don't even have a street food culture in Nairobi, but you can speak of a street food culture in Mombasa, and good cuisine that's, the mama viazi and whatever at the corner. So you're right, Vijay, that Mombasa is there a model of...
and Mombasa predates colonialism.
Yes. But even whatever was put up is probably 50, like beyond Old Town. That's colonial
but there was already an understanding of how to live in density and an acceptance of how to live
actually
in
there's an
density.
acceptance. Nobody has a problem living on top of a shop in Mombasa. That's a culture. And the courtyards and
so now you can
I've just thought
now
about
you can go ahead.
that. I've just thought about that, and I think I should come and live in Mombasa.
Exactly.
Actually, Vijay, you've actually answered my question. Yeah, so I think maybe my last question and what I would like to just get from each of you before we go to the Q&A session is it possible to have that balance? Is it possible to have a third world utopia? Yeah. Third world balance, perfection, aspiration.
Yes.
Nope.
You can say why.
I mean, somebody said it here, you know, Africans in general, I mean, unless maybe not in our time, what we're not changing is we're professionals. We can design a utopia, yeah? But it's not just a place, it's a state of mind. So, you know, and if you can convince the city council to stop giving out permits all over the place and that are not, you know, to follow rules, as you say, yes, then I think that's the first step. But at the moment, unfortunately, I turn you down on that one. Yeah.
I agree, I think. Oh, sorry.
So I would
You
just
said
to
yes.
give my reasoning for yes. It's a yes, but no single person can do it alone. That's for sure, right? It needs a group of people who believe in the same thing. And it needs people who are humble and people are looking for solutions. And with that dedication, it can happen, and I'm hopeful that some smart architects we're working with will help us get there.
I think yes, and it's necessary. But I think there are people who won't like it. And, you know, I think that's the conversation to be had. You know, why don't you like it? And how do we go from here? Because it's necessary.
So the question was?
Is it possible to achieve a third world balance?
Or utopia or balance? It is possible. So is it possible now? I don't know. It would need a moment like, you know, when it would need a revolution or something. Because I learned something yesterday, and no, I relearned something. Mindset, skill set, and tool set, yeah? So the three things that make us achieve anything is if you have the mindset to do it and the will, if you have the skills to do it, and if you have the tools just flowing down. So we certainly, in the context of Kenya, we have the skill set and the tool set. Tool set being the legal, the policy, whatever. We have the skill set. We have reasonable, you know, number of professionals who are benchmarking every time. I was on an urban task force and we were going benchmarking. Anyway, I hope they're not hearing me. But anyway, so we have the skill set, we have the tool set, but we don't have the mindset for utopia because we're still in a state of not thinking about other than self, you know? So what he said, that to get there, we must do it all together. We have to have the mindset of all of us as moving forward, but we are not there. We're at amassing things for myself. That's why market dynamics have such a big play, because it's about how much can I amass out of this. So how number of rules can I break to get this that I want for myself and not for the common good? So until something breaks and happens that will force us to change our mindset, then it may not be possible.
Sorry, let me jump in. We're also in the mindset of thinking we're a third world. We're not. Mm-hmm. We're not. At best, it's a cycle, and we're at the forefront of it. We just happen to be third world from the perspective of the people who call us third world.
No. That's deep. We have the tool set, skill set, but not on the mindset. Now you have to go deeper than that.
How much time are you giving? Can I take 5? So just very quickly. 1, Karuga is living in his utopia, and I'm going to visit him. 2, I am actually also kind of living in my utopia. because I made a very clear decision to come live in Nairobi. Yeah? I decided this is where I want to be. Why? Number one is weather. I don't think there's any better weather in the world than Nairobi. Two is friends and social
In July.
life. Totally. Two is friends and social life. With all those other things, it's still nice to have friends, social life. It's nice to have a little. We are a bit free in certain things. You don't. When you're invited for a party and you turn up a little late, nobody really feels bad about it. Yeah. So some of those things are just differences, and they are part of the social life that's important. Three, I totally agree that we shouldn't use the word third world. Four, I would say developing is not a bad word, because when do you stop developing? And if you stop developing, what's the point of it? Yeah. Five, I think in that whole thing, we should, and this is really going to the planners, to the market, and you know, I really liked when Emma was president of AAK. I always used to, once she says something, I send her something contrarian so that she begins to really get agitated and all that. But it was good. It was a good partnership. So you see, the way the planning should work right now, which is unfortunate, and we need to improve all our county planning operations. It's almost a yes or no. It's almost no, you can't do this. And really, it should now become about more inclusivity and more sit down to understand. Because at the end of the day, if the developer is not making money, it's not sustainable. So the developer needs to make money. But they're also, one of the important things to understand about approvals is you're not being given an approval to do what you want, you're being given an approval to not interfere with how others want to live. So that understanding that it's a collective life then becomes important. And then finally, 6, now I gave the immediate former, is this, no, it's Hinga, is this still PS or he has been changed for now? It's housing and all these affordable things. I gave him the Utopia. And this was when Railway City was being presented. You know, it's presented with all those fancy towers and all that. And I told him, really, you know, Hinga, what you should do is this thing, you should tell these guys to chop this thing up into 50 by 100s. Nicely. Yeah, not the usual 50 by 100s, 50 by 100s, and then figure out if somebody wants to take a bigger block, this is what they're then allowed to do. If somebody wants to take a smaller block, this is what they're allowed to do. Here are potential designs. This is our panel of experts, you know, all these people that we have. And the reason I was saying that is when you do that, then the economics begins to work. It allows for more people to participate. Because right now, the way they're doing it, maybe a few people in this room, let me not look at them, might be able to participate in the Railway City. But if they drop it to 50 by 100, more people will be able to participate in aiding the development, because they already do it. All those guys went to Githurai. Yes. They went to... And they built. Yes, and they built. And they built without rules, because the rules were telling them yes or no. And then you
not
get...
what can we do together?
Not what can we do together, and understanding that, look, a guy is going to buy this plot for 2 million, this is what he can build, this is what the rent is, this is... So work backwards from that economics and tell them, hold on, you know, you can actually build this and build this well and get in all those people. Yeah. So that's the utopia that we are missing for now. And it would be very, very different from Barcelona. It would be very different from Dubai. It would be very different from Singapore, because we will have thought through it ourselves for real.
Wow. Wow.
Did I answer the question?
You did. You did it on the third point. Yeah. I think, in conclusion, it really is a conversation to be had, a continuous one. It's really not, it's not really a straight answer. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a discussion we need to have. Boogertman+Partners will be at the forefront. So yeah, feel free to engage us at any moment. So with that being said, I think first let's give a round of applause to our panelists.
I'm so sorry, but I had to.
It's okay, Miss Emma.
Thank you. That is a good word. I just want us to end with a quote from Desiderata. I don't know why when people were talking, I thought about it. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy.
Oh. Nice. Thanks for that, Emma. I will take 2 questions from the audience. Yeah.
So I'm going to try and end with a question. And it's a project I was working on where we're doing housing, affordable housing. And one of the solutions we wanted to give for dignity living is a garden on the roof. You live sustainably. However, when we went to do a focus group on that solution, and particularly to the women who we were speaking to, said that, and it's for affordable units, so it's low income. They said they already have work that they're stressed about. They don't want to come home to farm again. You know, so the utopia that we were trying to create for them didn't actually work. Yeah, so they wanted an urban living, or rather maybe the question is, why were they so stressed? Number 2, and in anyone who lives in Karen has probably gotten stuck in traffic because of the Maasai cows that cross the roads. And the question is there a sort of balance where someone can live, or rather 2 different types of people can live in the same environment, someone with cows and someone who doesn't want a farm, but living in the same urban scale?
I'll just jump in because I think the cave has a project called the Cow Corridor, and it's that same issue. The fact that Nairobi has grown to become the capital of the city, but it was essentially Maasai settlers and their cows. So we conceptualized this idea that we open up a corridor for animals to cross, right? So I think it's about the first question you asked, why are people stressed? Yeah, I don't think, as architects, we don't dwell on that issue enough. We don't dwell on what people actually want or need. We think we know what we think we know what they want based on the education we've been through. Again, most of it Western, not necessarily rooting ourselves in what actually is. I think I also have to, drop this in there. Spirituality is maybe how we can start to look back. It's how we can start to understand what really is at the core of what the human being wants for their lives, and yeah, how to design for that, how to bring that, to birth that, to set that up on the world as we shape it. Yeah.
Just for those in University of Nairobi, Kahare Miano, famous several years back, I think, because they are 93, so this might be about 95. He had a painting with those cows, and he really loves discussing it. So he says he got caught in traffic with those cows, and he was getting frustrated. Then he realized, hold on, these cows were there before me, so let them pass, and then I'll move on. And I think I've lived with that ethos. Every time I see those cows, I get really amused. So but then it then calms me down. I stop getting stressed about the. So we'll figure it out somewhere along the line.
I just add something there. I mentioned I get milk for my neighbors. So literally, when I was driving down, right in a rush to make it here, I came out and found all the cows on the road, the same cows. So you can't get. So, we have to coexist, basically.
Thanks for that, Karuga.
All right, thank you. So mine's not necessarily a question, but just an insight around urban living. And I think one of the things that I've noted is that if you look around at a lot of the buildings, we tend to ignore the natural resources, be it light, water, air. And these are things that are freely available to us. But I just wonder, why is it that we are not taking care of these elements? Why is it that we are not harvesting our water? And yet it is stopping us. When it rains, it ends up becoming a nightmare for everybody. Why is it that we are incurring such high electricity bills, and yet natural lighting is available to us, and we don't have to switch on our lights at 7 a.m. if we were to design the spaces in such a way that we do take advantage of all these things? So I guess my challenge to the architectural world is, how do we then ensure that we are able to bring in the commercial elements, because of course people want to make money, and it's important that they do so they can keep building, but I don't think that is to the exclusion of taking advantage of the resources that are freely available to us.
I think it's back to the mindset. We know it, we have tool sets, we've got building codes that talk about light and everything. And maybe it's not even, and it's skill set as well, but one interesting fact that I wanted to mention, and maybe not in the Githurai context, but in the Kayolesho. Yes, and Kilimani context, that even when we're saying that who's breaking the rules, it's actually not Kenyans. So that's interesting, interesting dynamic, that we're such a rule-breaking culture that anybody who comes in also breaks the rule, just goes with the flow of the mindset anyway. So anyone who's coming to do things in this context. So maybe it's the people, the custodians who are supposed to be, making sure people keep the rules, because I think anywhere in the world people love to break rules. But you get whipped once, and then next time you keep it. I mean, we don't whip children in our school, but I'm in a school setup. So consequences, choices should have consequences so they're not repeated anyway. So that we know it, the tool set is there, but the mindset, back to that. Why aren't we doing things the way we were taught to? Yeah.
I also think we don't learn from nature, we learn from ego, and that's a problem. Yeah.
I think that marks
to answer your one of your questions more specifically, right? So let's take rainwater harvesting. Right? It depends on how much rain when it rains. So in an environment where you have two very high rainy seasons and then dry seasons, rainwater needs to be consumed. So it's a different answer to a solution where you have a certain amount of average rainfall throughout the year. It's a different answer to where you have two rainy seasons and you got to store the water. So the real solution is not for every individual developer or every individual development to answer that question. The real solution is you take a step back, have an urban planning that gathers this water, takes it to a sewage system, recycles it, and pumps it back to us. So some solutions are not possible at the individual level.
I completely agree. I think we have two sides of this, which is the public space, which is dams, collecting rainwater, etc., and generating power. I mean, run on solar power. Then we also have us as professionals, as designers, learning how to deal with all those environmental aspects: water, collecting water, cleaning water, collecting solar energy, reducing energy waste. I did a thesis on tall buildings in Nairobi some years back. One building also that we had designed with Andrew, and I realized that a lot of these buildings, tall buildings, waste a lot of energy. Yeah, so basically designing more efficient buildings, literally to even a one-bed apartment. Yes. So I think as designers, it's very important for us to look at that, on our side.
Yeah, and maybe to jump in on that, one of the things that we got caught up with is we are caught up because growth happened and it seemed that we were afraid of it happening. There's been a lot of growth, which should be a good thing. The country is growing, but we had never, for some reason, accepted that would happen. And I was just thinking, as Vijay was speaking about the water and all these things, that it's really collective. I think until now, everybody still does their drawings when they submit to council and then show some drain to the
I see.
to stormwater.
Yes.
We all do that. And where is that water going? And now, yes. And now, and obviously, when these guys go benchmark, you'll go find out that in more dense places, there's a very clear metric, because they understand that any development will increase impervious surface, which will increase runoff. And if you suddenly increase all that runoff, that water still needs to go somewhere. And it will go to the rivers, but it will go to the rivers faster. And it will go to the rivers after cleaning up all the oil and soot on the roads and all that. And so what do these guys do? They simply give you a metric and say, okay, this was the filtration that could happen in this plot. You should not exceed that. Even after you develop, you should not exceed this rate. So they'll then force you that even if you are giving that, even if you're sending that water to the city council sewer, to the city council drain, there's a rate at which you can do that, forcing you to design for that, controlling the flooding, looking at increasing infiltration. So all these things, and this is where a little of my frustration exists, is a lot of these solutions are there, but we took that old special status and said, this is it. And then we don't really conceive that. And one of the things that's very interesting, I find many developers are ahead of the county. There are those ones that Emma is talking about who might not be ahead, but there are many others who really want to do the right thing. Yes, but it takes you, there's something, somebody has been waiting for 3 years for an approval because they're trying to do it the right way, and it's actually a very good development, but they can't have a conversation around what this should mean. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, everyone. I think we can call it a close. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists.